Alright, you have to watch all of this. I don't care what you say. It's really important. If you don't, then you're a clown and you will never understand Naruto scaling. And I hate you. Sorry. In all seriousness, this video is like a full comprehensive scale of Naruto in Shippuden. It will pretty much be covering all of Naruto's scaling. So all the way from the Rescue Kazekage arc to the War arc. And don't be like, why am I making this and not the full power Naruto video? You should all really know why. This is in preparation for that video. You kind of need to understand how strong he is in Shippuden before you understand how strong he is in Boruto as an adult. And it's mainly the skill kind of stuff, so I can kind of build on top of it later on, and I don't really need to address all of his stuff later on. If you don't just want to see Naruto stuff, so maybe you want to see like Bleach scaling, Black Clover scaling, Fairy Tail scaling, just let me know. I know a few people have been asking, so I will eventually get around to doing that. If you do like this content, the best way to support me right now is by subbing and liking the video, and then hopefully we can get 2K really quick. Okay, I guess we should start with the beginning of Shippuden. We know Naruto does his bell test alongside Sakura against Kakashi, and this time round he's actually a lot better. If you're using the anime, he actually takes a front lotus from Kakashi, but most likely Kakashi was suppressed, and this is anime filler. Manga wise, Naruto does suggest he's stronger than part 1 Kakashi, but Kakashi's like, I've got stronger now in Shippuden. Right after this, he obviously has to go rescue Gaara, and it takes him like 3 days to travel to the Sand Village. Apparently that's how long it will take Tsunade too, so it seems he's like the same speed as Tsunade in her base. Feat wise, we all know what happens when he arrives. Base Naruto is actually capable of dodging a bloodlusted Chiyo's attacks. We don't really know how strong Chiyo was or fast, but we can somewhat quantify it. She was actually able to swap hands with Sasori. Sasori was most likely suppressed, so I don't know if you could actually use him as a good scaling method. Chiyo could swap hands with Hanzo, and Hanzo could swap hands with Mifune, who has a statement about being light speed. I'd assume she's at least Jonin level and beyond Onbu from a leaf, and we know Onbu from a leaf actually stayed light speed. We know that normal Jonin are actually superior to special Jonin, who are like closer to the Chunin level, and the Sound 4 even in their Curse Mark 2 states struggled on special Jonin, who are weaker than normal Jonin. So I'd assume that she's actually way beyond anybody in the Sound 4, probably beyond like people like Choji who are like Calc Island level even in part 1. However, when Naruto gets amped by the Nine Tails, so you know he kind of gets a little bit angry, he's not that much stronger than base, but it is quite notable. He should actually be relative in speed to people like Kakashi, because they kind of kept pace with Deidara together roughly around the same speed. To be fair, he was actually keeping up with Kakashi in base, but when he actually used some of his Nine Tails power, he was slightly quicker, and he could also harm Deidara. Though to be absolutely fair, this Deidara was weakened. He had just come back from a fight with Gaara, and then afterwards he actually had to give some of his chakra away for the Biju extraction thingy. At this stage in the story, it's a bit of a stretch to say Naruto is this level or around that level, because we don't really have a lot of scaling. So he should actually have access to everything he learned in part 1. He should be able to create like 1,000 shadow clones who can all work together. Naruto should easily be able to like generate multi-step plans within a few seconds. Naruto also has a high luck statistic, so like he kind of has like probability manipulation a little bit. Has access to like normal ninja tools and stuff. That includes all of the stuff listed here, so he should actually be able to use all of them. Now after the Kazekage rescue mission, we're introduced to a character called Sai. We all know who Sai is, however Sai actually has some interesting statements. I mean, Sai is literally an Onbu. He can even swap hands with Onbu, so he's definitely at least light speed. Danzo states he's the strongest of their generation, relative to Naruto. And yes, to avoid confusion, Danzo is actually referring to people Naruto's age, not everybody in the fucking village. So I would assume they're beyond Neji, and Neji could actually somewhat contend with a 30% base Kisame. He could air palm him away and he could actually break his water prison, so there's no reason to assume that he's not at least relative to this Kisame. And we know normal base Kisame can actually fight Jinchuriki. And when Danzo calls Naruto and Sai the strongest of their generation or age, what Naruto is he actually using? Is he using base Naruto, or is he using like a Nine Tails Amp Naruto? So he probably has some understanding of how strong Naruto is, and plus it kind of makes sense that Sai and Naruto are equal in their base, because we say base Naruto kind of swap hands, or at least block an attack from Sai. And to prove Naruto does actually scale somewhat to these like 30% Akatsuki clones like Kisame and Itachi, Naruto when he's slightly amped by the Nine Tails is actually able to create a Rasengan that can kill Itachi at 30%. So we know at this stage Naruto is somewhat contending with these like 30% Akatsuki clones. And we know Akatsuki can actually like fight Biju and Jinchuriki, so I'd assume that Naruto is at least 30% that, or at least near that kind of mark. Maybe like 20%. I would say he's like high Jonin tier. Moving on to the next arc when he fights Orochimaru. We see a Three Tails cloaked Naruto, However, apparently he wasn't even a match for like heavy Sasuke according to Orochimaru. So we can't really gauge him, but we do know Four Tails Naruto is actually a lot stronger. But essentially he fights Jiraiya, almost killing him, during Naruto and Jiraiya's training arc right before Shippuden. Now I'm going to assume this was base Jiraiya because it can't really be Sage Jiraiya because he has better scaling obviously, directly scaling him above this Naruto. So assuming it was base Jiraiya, we know base Jiraiya's actually got weaker from part 1 to part 2. It's quite notable because he was actually stated equal to Orochimaru. And Orochimaru before he lost his powers was capable of fighting Hiruzen, the strongest Kage of his time. Now this Four Tails Naruto is actually giving Orochimaru trouble too. So he is like Sannin level or like weaker Sannin level. Since Naruto is basically a version 2-tailed beast, he should actually be relative to the other version 2-tailed beasts since he is the 9 tails, potentially the strongest tailed beast. And we know version 2-tailed beasts are actually comparable to the Biju selves, not that far off. So at this point Naruto's actually close to like Biju level. Depending on how strong you think Biju bombs are, they're like country level to multi-continental. We know Biju can actually tank them. And so if you're Biju level, right, you're roughly around that kind of tier. If you want, you can gauge how strong Naruto is via how much chakra he has. We know he has like 4 times Kakashi's chakra in his base, and then like 100 times his chakra when he's like using his tailed beast power. I know Seth likes doing this, but I'm not gonna because I don't think chakra and potency like directly correlate. To conclude this arc, Naruto in his 4 tails is also capable of poisoning people upon contact. He does this against Sakura, poison beyond Sasori's, which is a poison beyond Hanzo's. Now moving on to the Kokuzu arc, where Naruto fights Kokuzu. Obviously the Kokuzu scaling is a little bit controversial. You know, you either think he's a beast or he's crap. However, I think most people can agree that Kokuzu is one of the strongest members in the Akatsuki. So base Naruto manages to take him out. How does he actually do this? I'd assume this Kokuzu is a lot more fatigued than he was like at the beginning of the fight, since he has lost 2 hearts at this point and is looking tired. Though base Sharingan Kakashi was actually somewhat keeping up with Kokuzu in speed and could somewhat swap hands with him in the anime, he stated if he was actually using his Mangekyo Sharingan he probably would have been able to take Kokuzu out. But he didn't really have to resort to that, mainly because it takes up too much chakra. And by the end of the fight, Kakashi kind of implies that base Naruto has somewhat surpassed Kokuzu. And even himself, he says to Naruto verbatim, I think he says it twice in fact, that base Naruto has actually surpassed him. I'd assume it's him using the Mangekyo Sharingan too. So I'd assume base Naruto at this point is higher Akatsuki tier. He's even stronger when using the Rasen Shuriken. And it makes sense that Kakashi at this point is actually higher Akatsuki tier since he can swap hands with Diva Pain. Now obviously this isn't Diva Pain at his strongest. However, Pain should actually be one of the strongest members in the Akatsuki, if not the strongest physically anyways at this point. And where was I? Naruto uses the Rasen Shuriken to kill Kokuzu. The Rasen Shuriken actually gives Naruto power relative to Minato. We know Minato is actually capable of killing Killer Bee. So it makes sense that base Naruto is getting closer to his Biju levels of power. And with the Rasen Shuriken, he's honestly Biju level already. Hacks wise, you can say the Rasen Shuriken like negs durability because it's affecting you on a cellular level. So it kind of slips through the pores of your skin, therefore affecting what's beyond your conventional durability. Kakashi also states he can make so many clones that is equivalent to the leaves on this giant tree. I think a lot of his giant trees tend to have like 10,000 leaves. So if you think Naruto can make that many clones, that's a possibility. Now moving on to the Pain arc, so Naruto versus Pain. Well, we know base Naruto is already like Kakashi level, who is like higher Akatsuki tier. Naruto actually goes through another training arc, with the Frog Sages. So his base is probably even stronger than it was before. He then learns Sage Mode. The Sage Mode amplification is debatable. Some people think it's unquantifiable and it depends on how much chakra you absorb, right? But some people think there's like a baseline to it. There's at least about 10 times baseline because it's like one of the strongest Sage transformations. It should be beyond the Curse Mark 2, which is a 10 times amplification. And that it surpasses its predecessors, including Jiraiya and possibly base Minato. Sage Mode Naruto should definitely be beyond Jiraiya because he's perfected Sage Mode, whereas Jiraiya hadn't really. I'd assume he's more potent than somebody like base Minato, considering that he's rivaling his power in base, with the Rasen Shuriken at the very least. Sage Mode Naruto can one-shot these Paths of Pain casually. However, is he near the Diva Path's full power? And I don't think so, because the Diva Path gets stronger as the other paths are taken down. Now there's an actual statement saying that the Diva Path is actually beyond Sage Mode Naruto. Now this is one of the texts that they actually add within the original run. In this case, we don't actually know who exactly wrote it. It could have been the author, maybe the editor, but it doesn't really matter. Because it's really good supporting evidence. It's good supporting evidence because we know that Pain actually contends with a stronger Naruto. So a KN6 version 2 Naruto. And it's kind of implied that he's stronger than Sage Mode Naruto. Because he's completely destroying Pain and like Sage Mode Naruto really couldn't do this. Like in the anime he's ripping through his Shinra Tensei. and like kind of keeping up with him, making Pain kind of run away and make Pain pull out his strongest jutsu. If you are actually allowing these side texts, it's actually stated that Pain is the strongest man in the Akatsuki. So there's no doubt in my mind that Naruto is at least reaching his high Kage and high Biju levels of power by the end of this arc. So how strong was Naruto in this arc? Well, we know Naruto slightly after this is like a competitor for MS Sasuke. So according to Zetsu, we know Zetsu thinks that like Naruto would actually beat Sasuke only because Pain lost. So even if they're using version 2 Six Tails Naruto, we know he should scale above Sasuke. And Sasuke at this point has the Mangekyo Sharingan, and he can kind of harm the 8 Tails. So we know he's near these higher Biju levels. However, I'd assume that Sage Mode Naruto is slightly weaker than Mangekyo Sharingan Sasuke, only because he himself admits that Sasuke at this point, during the 5 Kage summit, is kind of stronger than him. And we know Naruto was capable of sensing Sasuke's chakra. Ironically, I think he was in Sage Mode when he was trying to sense Sasuke's power, and this was Sasuke right before he had become blind. Regardless, Sage Naruto then goes on to beat the 9 Tails in his base. Now this is a base 9 Tails, so the 9 Tails isn't being amped by a vessel. Naruto does actually get help and use like a fuck ton of like shadow clones. However, he's actually able to harm the 9 Tails by himself, so I'd assume he's at least relative to the base 9 Tails. So the reason like a tailed beast is stronger when they have a vessel is because it's actually stated. They're actually able to condense their chakra more and use it more efficiently. Hence like Deidara could easily take out like the 3 Tails, but kind of struggles to take out people who are like normal Jinchuriki level. So there's 2 ways to actually scale this 9 Tails. You can say that the base 9 Tails, even half of his chakra, so this is the one that fights Naruto, is actually stated to be able to turn the world to ash, so he's planet level. Or you can lowball and say, oh well, he's only surface wiping, and that's what he means by destroying society or the world. A bare minimum, that would put him like high multi-continental, so literally near moon level, because surface wiping is actually a big deal. If you don't think it is, then sure, he's even lower, but it tends to be that kind of level. So within Sage Mode, he has access to various hacks, one of them being Frog Kata. So Frog Kata is like a series of punches and kicks, and then the final one, Naruto kind of like matches the opponent's power, and then like does his punch, and with his Sage energy kind of extends the reach, so even if it misses, it kind of tricks the opponent and catches him off guard. That extended Sage energy actually seeps into the opponent, bypassing their conventional durability, so that's pretty broken too. He uses Frog Strike, which is similar to Frog Kata, but instead he kind of like slaps you, and this wave of Sage energy actually goes into you, and is literally stated to bypass conventional durability, since it actually damages your inside organs and stuff, so it does internal damage. And the chakra is transmitted through your body like a wave, so it actually has a massive area of effect too. Once Kurama's befriended him later on, he might actually have access to Frog Song, so you know how he gets those 2 Sage Frogs on his shoulders? They might actually be able to do a Genjutsu, and it's actually an audio Genjutsu, potentially more powerful than Mangekyo Sharingan, since it's actually stated to be the most powerful Genjutsu up to the Pain arc. If you think Itachi Tsukiyomi is better, that's fine. He can actually transmit his chakra, and if he transmits his Sage chakra, he can turn the opponent into a frog. If he excessively does this, he can turn you to stone, so it's like petrification. A disadvantage might be, to activate Sage Mode, Naruto needs to stand still. However, he kind of uses clones to like gain all of this energy, so he can do it quite quickly if he has prep time. Now we're starting off with the War arc. I'll get onto his other notable forms in this arc. He does actually fight the 3rd Raikage, and he has a really good intelligence feat. He kind of exploits his weakness, knowing he has like a scar on his chest, so that's a good intelligence feat. And Naruto's first power is KCM, so he's kind of learned how to control some of like Kurama's chakra. If anything, I think Sage Mode might be a better ramp. However, there's certain things that like KCM allows that Sage Mode doesn't. Also, the reason I'm saying they're roughly in the same tier is because like Sage Naruto should be like high Biju tier, whereas like KCM 1 Naruto is still fighting Biju, getting harmed by them. He is kind of adapting, and he was kind of like fatigued when he fought the Biju, because like, you know, he'd been fighting for a few days straight at this point. But I assume KCM Naruto is at least like Biju level, probably high Biju level, just like Sage Mode. For example, Sage Mode Naruto is near Mangekyo Sharingan Sasuke, who can take on characters like Killer Bee, the Raikage, and seems to be the same level as KCM 1 Naruto. And now we're getting on to that really infamous feat, where Naruto blitzes the 4th Raikage. A lot of people have complained about like how fast Naruto is and why certain calcs are like over exaggerated or don't work. But I won't really give you a number because I don't really want to annoy anyone. You guys all know like what blitzing somebody is, it just means you're a lot faster than them. It should be noted that Minato does like a similar feat where he blitzes A, and they should still be able to use the lariat around that time. And we all know the lariat at least makes you light speed. I would assume so, since like even like normal Jonin in a light speed, and you know Haku can do light speed stuff. We know that A is actually able to do the lariat in his base, and then he gets like this lightning cloak that should make him even faster. and then Naruto blitzes that lightning cloak, so we're not too sure how fast he is. I'll just link like a bunch of different calcs that kind of figure out the same feat, and then you can kind of decide what one you want to use. But he should be a lot faster than the speed of light, to be fair. Hacks wise, he can actually create multiple arms, and also he does his tug of war with his soul against Nagato, meaning he has like soul manipulation, and his physical strikes can actually affect people's souls. It's kind of debatable if every character in Naruto can do this though. And within KCM, this is a bit weird, but he can actually sense positive or negative emotions. Also, his will is physically able to resist the control of Kurama, so he has a will manipulation resistance. So during his fight with the Biju, he actually gets a power up. We call this power up KCM2, because he's essentially mastered the KCM power. He gets like this Kurama avatar. Now because Kurama has a vessel, he's a lot stronger. Visibly, Naruto's kind of grown like his cloak, or his cape. And now using Kurama avatar, he's actually able to like blast away multiple Biju Damas at the same time. So he's technically contending with like 5 other Biju at the same time. So I'd assume he's drastically stronger than he was before. A lot of people like to say, oh look, he has a planet level statement now, stating that he could shatter the entire planet. However, this is a mistranslation, unfortunately. It states that he's shattering the earth. And by earth, the kanji kind of like means the ground. So it's not really like a planet level thing. He goes on to kind of get beat down by the Jubi. But Jubi in his first form is literally flicking away this Kurama avatar quite casually. But Jubi in his second form has like small planet levels of chakra, and it should be able to contain all of that. Anyways, KCM2 Naruto actually gets stronger, and so does his Kurama avatar. At this point, Naruto in KCM2 alone has chakra relative to Hashirama. Now Hashirama is one of the top tiers at this point. He can actually even contend with the Jubi, holding it down with his deity gates, and has absolute binding force equivalent to the Jubi. We later see Obito become a 10 tails Jinchuriki. In fact, Naruto has so much chakra at this point, he can actually power up the whole Shinobi Alliance by 3 times Kakashi's chakra. And this is Warrior Kakashi, so he has a fuck ton of chakra. And now that he's a perfect Jinchuriki, he actually has cooperation from Kurama, meaning that he can't actually be caught by Genjutsu. At least Sasuke's Mangekyou Sharingan level Genjutsu, since B can actually resist it. Now Naruto versus Jubito. Obviously, Obito becomes a 10 tails Jinchuriki. And once Obito had the sword of Nunobuko, he kind of states that this sword was used to make the planet. He's actually wrong about that. However, knowing his power, he's under the impression he's definitely able to destroy the planet at the very least. He actually states he's about to obliterate the planet, meaning he's probably not going to leave anything behind. I wouldn't really assume he's lying, since the Jubi is near planet level already. He probably doesn't want to destroy the planet, but in this scenario, he was bloodlusted, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was so angry that he felt like destroying the planet in this case. KCM2 Naruto and EMS Sasuke at this point are kind of contending with him. Naruto and Sasuke then have to kind of like stack stage transformations on top of their already existing forms. And when it comes to like his actual like sword of Nunobuko, they have to kind of fuse avatars and make the majestic attire, and then actually break the sword of Nunobuko. So together, at the very least, they actually scale to planet level. Speed wise, we know they're beyond Hashirama, because Hashirama's like, oh, I can't really contend with Jubito. And Jubito was kind of like outspeeding Hashirama a little bit. So Hashirama is relative to Edo Madara, and Edo Madara has like this feat of bringing down like meteors from an asteroid belt at like 500 times faster than the speed of light. If you think that's exaggerated, you don't need to use it, but there shouldn't be much wrong with it. Okay, it makes like assumptions, but technically everything you use makes an assumption. Like me assuming you exist right now is an assumption. You see what I mean? Like I hate that kind of argument. You can't use assumptions. Everything you do is pretty much an assumption. If you're using things like cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. So the only thing you know is you exist as an individual. Everything else is like an assumption. So because this calc uses likely assumptions, it should be valid. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that, right? So I don't get what people's problem is with that. If you want, you can use like calc stacking. You could be like, ooh, this form is near this form, which is like a 10 times amp. Therefore, all of these forms are 10 times amps, and use that crap instead. I don't like doing that. I'd rather just use direct feeds, but sure, you can use whatever you want. And we've reached the main course. So how strong is 6 Paths Naruto? Well, first we kind of need to figure out how strong Madara is. Well, we know Madara should be significantly stronger than Jubito. He literally has the 9 tails, 8 tails, so his 6 Paths should be more complete. And I think Minato even states that he's stronger than Jubito, and he's actually seen Jubito's power. So right after fighting Might Guy, Naruto appears, and visit base Sage Mode 6 Paths Naruto, and he pretty much like starts clapping Madara and like scares him more than Might Guy ever did in the 8th gate. Madara is kind of forced to absorb the God Tree, and then Naruto actually stacks KCM on top of his power, or uses it in conjunction with like his pre-existing power, and now you have 6 Paths KCM Naruto. who kind of progressively fights Madara. Both of them are actually constantly getting stronger. Madara's getting like more dojutsu and eyes, and Naruto just getting stronger. Though Naruto was getting bodied at first, but then like later on near the end of the fight, when Madara's got like double Rinnegan, he creates Limbo clones that are equal to him, and Naruto can easily swap hands with him. And this is not even Naruto, these are his shadow clones who can do this. Madara even grows a Shinju, or the god tree, around the planet. Now if you calculate this, if you assume it takes him a few seconds because he's talking and doing like a small dialogue, even though it should be way faster than that, but let's humor people and say it's only a few seconds anyways. You can get the feat to like large planet level quite easily. I remember he's kind of using a wood style jutsu to do this, so if you think his wood style jutsu is any slower than lightning speed, I don't know what's wrong with you, dude. Regardless, you don't even need to use any of this stuff, because like Madara, when he's even weaker than this, I think Hagoromo stated that he was getting closer to his power, and we know Hagoromo should at least be like near Kaguya's power. So if you want to like assume that, then he's like getting closer to like Kaguya. And I'm going to explain how strong Kaguya is in a second, so there's no point in explaining it here. And also now Naruto has Magnet Style. A Magnet Style can actually be used for sealing, so Naruto does actually have sealing jutsu at this point. If you want to go further, he has a creation of all things jutsu. Now for the long-time Naruto fans, they might know what this is. It's like the most broken thing within the whole verse. It says in the data book he's perfected it, so if he potentially knows it, he's invincible. He should know literally every jutsu. He should actually be able to spam Izanagi and Izanami, making him nigh invincible, but this is probably not the case. If it is, Naruto's a bit stupid and he doesn't know how to use it. But at the very least, we've seen him use it for like healing, and it's kind of implied Might Guy might have died and then he kind of like revived him from death, because Might Guy was meant to die from actually using the 8th gate. So Naruto kind of bypassed that. And this is actually backed up slightly after this, when like Obito was meant to die, right? After using Rinne Rebirth, and he literally stated that he died, yet Naruto still kept him alive somehow. So Naruto with this weird interaction can actually potentially revive people from death. He doesn't really use this later on though, so it's a bit contentious if he still has it or not. He also has a truth-seeking orbs on his back, and those can actually neg durability, since they're actually comprised of all 5 elements. And even 3 elements alone actually neg durability, because that's essentially what particle style is, and apparently this erases people on a higher degree. It potentially actually destroys people's souls, because when Madara uses it on Minato's arm, his arm doesn't actually grow back once he's kind of floated away and become a soul. Apparently Naruto's normal punches should actually affect people's souls, so this is not that big of a deal anyways. Some people think he has command of all things in nature, so that's like causality manipulation, but we're not quite sure how that works. Also, don't forget he is Ashura's reincarnation, and Ashura actually has all of Hagoromo's stamina. Well, at least he inherited it. And Hagoromo could fight for months straight if you are using the filler. If not, Naruto's stamina should still be crazy. For days on end he's been fighting in the War Arc. In all honesty, he doesn't even have a stamina limit. He can keep on like recharging his chakra. So as long as he's fighting and Kurama's kind of like regaining this chakra, then he's getting it back. I remember Kurama does provide him with like physical stamina too, because chakra is like physical energy and mental energy. Later on he's also able to sense Sasuke from another dimension. And now that we're talking about sensory ability, Naruto's actually capable of sensing Madara on another plane of existence to him. Obviously now, the really big boy stuff. How strong is Naruto versus Kaguya? Some of you already might know how strong Naruto and Kaguya are, based off this, if you've seen my earlier videos. But I'm going to go into more depth now and kind of explain like each of the moments. She is said to have far more chakra than Madara, and Madara was actually going to explode just from the initial amount of chakra he was gaining. Straight off the bat, Kaguya uses an 8 Gods vacuum attack, which is actually one of our higher techniques, or one of our most powerful techniques. It even has the potential to be the strongest attack. So ironically, it has the potential to be stronger than the actual expanding truth-seeking orb. Also, Kaguya is actually capable of creating her dimensions. And you've all heard this before, her dimensions are big enough to encompass a star. So they're like small solar system levels at least. And then the expanding truth-seeking orb should actually be able to like engulf all of her dimensions. She has about 6. So if she's encompassing all of them, if you really want to wank this, you could argue she's covering a space in between them. And the space in between them could be more like universal sizes. Because like even Obito's like, oh shit, the distance between them is insane. Even though he can travel or like teleport between his dimension and the already existing universe. But if you don't want to use that, of course, that's really like high-end stuff. And also if you're kind of destroying the space in between them and you assume that's like the construct holding them, it could be like a higher dimensional feat. But all of that is like a little bit high-end. You can just say it's like large star level or nice solar system level or something. That's absolutely fine. If you want to know more about the universal, high universal, low multiversal stuff, or I could include it in a full power Kaguya video maybe. And that would also include speed, and her actually potentially existing beyond time and space. But it doesn't really matter where you have Kaguya, because all that matters, really, is that Naruto kind of skills her. So you could have a, like, large star level, or you could have a, like, these other ridiculous levels. It doesn't really matter. Essentially, Naruto can actually harm her. He can slice her arm off. He can actually keep up with her. He actually even has the boil release that amps his stats to a comparable degree to the gates, apparently. Now, it depends on how you interpret it. I suppose you could interpret it that, like, Naruto, when using the boil release, kind of has, like, skill comparable to Lee's. Or you can interpret it like he gets, like, a similar amp to the gates. Even if you assume it's, like, up to the 5th gate or something, it's still ridiculous. If you use a data books, the 8th gate actually gives you an amp of several dozen times, which is 36 times plus. Regardless, it was enough to overwhelm Kaguya. It's also implied to be the most powerful taijutsu in the verse, so Naruto might physically be the strongest, beyond even Kaguya, and Kaguya's physical stats should somewhat relate to her actual, like, AP generally. Because she's able to do these crazy star level attacks and create these massive dimensions and stuff, right? So her durability should actually relate to that, because if you're producing that much energy, right, your body needs to be able to take, like, the counter force. It's like a thermodynamics thing, and it's also a really basic kind of concept. I think I've mentioned this in a few other videos now. It should be quite a simple premise. And then if, like, Naruto can punch and, like, harm her and slice her, then his striking potency would surely be at least close to that. I'm not saying it's the same or anything, right? I'm not saying his punches are like an expanding truth-seeking orb exploding or some shit, right? I'm just saying that it's in the same order of magnitude or somewhere around that tier. Naruto's also capable of doing his 6 paths Rasen Shurikens, which he fires at Kaguya, and apparently Kaguya can't even keep up physical form because they're that powerful. And then at the end of a fight, he seals away Kaguya. Not that he can actually individually use the sealing jutsu, it's kind of implied it's like a two-way thing. So alongside Sasuke, he's actually capable of sealing people using the Sun Seal. You kind of need the Moon Seal. And finally, the fight with Sasuke. Now, this isn't, like, too massive or anything, right? But, like, you know, he goes on to, like, pretty much body Sasuke, and he was kind of weakened for the most part. Naruto wasn't trying to kill him. He had almost, like, every disadvantage possible. And he was literally tanking Chidori's to the face. The only notable thing is the thing at the end, you know, when he uses the Ashura form. People are like, well, what kind of increase does it give you? Well, I might be able to somewhat quantify that. We know that Kurama Avatar makes 2 shadow clones. So it's really similar to what Kiba does when he makes 2 shadow clones. I've been kind of like combines them together, almost like fusing them. So each clone he makes is a 2 times multiplier on top of a previous one when they fuse. The 3-headed fusion always has a 6 times multiplier from base. And then what happens is Naruto uses Sage Mode. So he kind of like drains the entire planet's Sage energy or some shit to do this. So I'd assume it's at least 10 times. If you don't think it's that, it doesn't really matter. So it's essentially 6 times 10, which gets you like 60. So if you think it works like that, that's insane. I think it would kind of explain why Ashura Mode is considered one of the strongest forms within the verse. More interestingly, you can argue Naruto has fate manipulation, because he broke the cycle of vengeance between Ashura and Indra. They've totally kind of broken that prophecy. Another hacks Naruto has is poison manipulation. This one's slightly different. It's provided from Saken the Six Tails, and it actually corrodes people. He should also be able to produce a poison gas. How could I forget, Naruto has some of the best regen in the entire verse. He should at least be able to regen organs and limbs. Am I going to be covering Naruto for my last? Unfortunately not. I count that as adult Naruto anyway. Luckily for you, like when you do get onto the adult full power Naruto, we don't really need to cover his base, because I've actually done a video on adult base Naruto. You can watch that if you want. I know this video was kind of long, but hopefully you enjoyed it. If you like these longer videos, let me know. If you don't, I could go back to the 10-minute videos. As per usual, thank you for watching the video. On God, I love all you guys. No homo. Let's get 2k subs.